Welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined today by Derek Carty for a quick look at the Friday slate in the bigs. We also have Billy Ward coming in at the end of the episode with a pair of YRFI NRFI plays for that instant gratification gambling. Derek, how are you feeling post-trade deadline? Do you think that's the teams that you expected going in beefed up their roster, or there are a few surprises in terms of some franchises being a little quiet around the deadline?
I mean, I'm sure there's fan bases out there who are disappointed that their teams didn't make moves given just how crazy this deadline was. But just as a fan, as an analyst, like what an amazing deadline. Like just so many deals. It was so much fun, so many moving pieces. I think that's going to help us from a betting perspective too, just with rosters getting shaken up. Any team level stats are kind of going to be maybe a little bit more suspect. So anyone that can account for the actual individual pieces of every lineup, of every bullpen, of every team, which the Bad X projection system does, I think is probably going to have a little bit of an edge, over the next couple of weeks.
All right, let's dive into your bets. It looks like you have 5 plays, but we'll start with your best bet first. Nick Pivetta under 17.5 outs at plus money. You can find it in the market at plus 150. I like this right off the bat because you look at his last 6 starts and he's averaging 19 outs. You're playing under the 17.5. But when you dig into it, the common factor is he's been on an incredible heater. He dropped his ERA from 3.36 to 2.81 in the past 5 weeks. So to achieve a 19-out average, which is where he's been in that stretch, he's been virtually untouchable. Aside from his slider, which he rarely throws, batters aren't hitting better than 224 against any of his pitches individually. If the Cards can hit him, do you like him to get an early hook? Or do you think, given his recent success, he's going to have a looser leash and his pitch count is going to get into the neighborhood of 100 in this one?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see Pivetta pulled at 80 pitches or anything like that unless he's really getting hit around. But like you said, he's been getting very lucky of late and this year in general. He has the lowest BABIP of his career, the lowest home run per fly ball of his career, the highest strand rate of his career. It's just not sustainable. Like a 247 BABIP is not going to stand for a guy whose career average is 296. He's getting lucky on balls in play. And once that starts to normalize, which you have to expect it to immediately, basically, that's how this works, he's going to have to start throwing more pitches per out, essentially, because he's going to be letting guys on base more. They're going to be coming around to score more. And when that starts to happen, hopefully today, we're being offered value because this is based on what he's done, and what he's done is not sustainable.
Speaking of value, let's look at your favorite underdog for Friday. You like Atlanta plus 125 in that neighborhood on the money line. We can talk about price point cutoffs, but when you're modeling teams, do you take into account late season playoff positioning? The Braves obviously are drawing dead in that regard, sitting 13 and a half games out of the last wild card slot in the NL. And I mean, they've also rightfully been playing things safe. They're sending Acuna to the IL with the Achilles, tightness. But there's a ton of baseball left to play. So even though they were quiet at the deadline and they appear to be out of the postseason race, it's still, 2 months worth of baseball. So is there a time when you start to factor in that white flag nature, so to speak? When does that start mattering? Is it when the rosters expand in September? Is there a time when you need to tweak your modeling a bit to account for the fact that some teams just really don't have much to play for?
That's not something that I really worry about too much, because even if the team doesn't have something to play for, the players do. Like, you don't get to the major leagues without having some sort of innate competitive drive. And even if your team, isn't maybe in playoff contention, like, you're still playing for your next paycheck. You're still playing to pad your own stats. So really, I think that's more narrative than anything substantial. So it's not something I worry about, not something I try to account for. The Braves are nowhere near the team we thought they were going to be coming into the year, but you can certainly make the case they've underperformed. They have plenty of talent in the lineup. Facing a pitcher in Brady Singer who has not looked very good and who has a very wide platoon split, and will be facing probably 6 or 7 opposite handers here. So I actually have the Braves projected as a small favorite. So if we're going to get them here at plus 125, I will take that.
Before we get to Billy Ward's YRFI Nerfies, we got 3 player props. Let's start with Gavin Williams under 17.5 outs at plus money in the plus 125 range. Unlike Pavetta, the same bet in terms of the total 17.5. Williams has been closer to a 50-50 pitcher in this market since late May in terms of over under this particular number. Do your projections weigh in his, overall leash, his overall pitch count, and also the bullpen freshness? This is kind of where I want this question to pivot on. The Guardians are in really good shape after 2 laughers against the Rockies. So are they more likely to go to the pen? And if so, does that factor into your play here?
Yeah, that's definitely something that you want to account for. There's a small effect there, and that's definitely going to help this. Similar to Pavetta, Gavin Williams also getting lucky on balls in play, 267 BABIP. His ERA is a full run lower than his Sierra. Another guy that we should expect some regression to come to when it happens. He's going to be less efficient. He's going to need more pitches per out, which means fewer outs per appearance. And like you said, he's already only like about 50-50 on this. So I like this one. This one looks solid to me.
These last 2 are under on strikeouts at plus money. And what I find interesting about both is that there's limited information out there. Let's start with Carlos Cortez from the Oakland Athletics. Strike that. The West Sacramento Athletics. As I said, limited sample size, quite literally 9 career starts. He struck out in 6 of his first 8 games, this being his 9th start. So what are you seeing here, and how do you model somebody where you have to go off of minor league performances and plate appearances?
Yeah, there's a big difference between who this guy was in the minors and what we've seen in a very small sample in the majors so far. And I think that's why we're getting value here. That's why the line is set where it is, because in the majors so far, he has struck out a ton. You look at what he's done in the minors, though, and it's nowhere near that. He's striking out at a 31% rate so far in the majors. And at AAA earlier this year, it was 14%. Like, it's a huge difference. You look at Fangraphs, you look at the projection systems, they're all around more like 20 to 22% as opposed to 30%. Plus, he's a guy who they have shown a willingness to pinch hit for. The BATX projecting about a 27% pinch hit risk here. And he's facing Anthony DeSclafani, who is coming out of the bullpen to slide into the rotation after the trade deadline stuff, not going to be fully stretched out yet. So there's a chance of the bullpen coming in a lot earlier than a normal game. It's a bullpen that has several lefties, which is kind of what we're hoping for. And so, yeah, a lot of this kind of adds up to good value on the under here for Cortez.
We turn to another young gun, a top prospect now in the Astros lineup. That's Jacob Melton, under 1 strikeout here at plus 170. Another youngster, limited experience, limited plate appearances, but he's averaging more than 1 strikeout per game. And as of recording, Boston hasn't landed on a starter yet. Do you feel like these numbers in terms of the market are overly generous because books are just looking off of this small sample size? And how much does the pitching, both starting and bullpen, overall freshness and availability factor into a play like this?
Yeah, it all factors in. This one I think is very similar to Cortez, where his strikeout rate in the major so far is extremely high. It's 38%, but it's only 37 plate appearances. You look at what he was doing in the minors, and he's more like a 25, 26% strikeout rate kind of guy going forward. We don't know who's pitching for Boston yet. I think Cooper Criswell is a decent guess, and the bullpen is pretty fresh and has a bunch of lefties in it. So Melton is a guy who they have also shown a willingness to pinch hit for when the bullpen comes in. Hopefully it's one of those. They could have as many as 4 lefties. Hopefully it's one of them. About a 32% pinch hit risk we're looking at here for Melton. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. Pretty much the same thing as Cortez. Facing a starter, whoever it is, probably on a shorter leash than normal, with some pinch hit risk with the bullpen. And the minor league numbers do not tell the same story as the small sample major league numbers so far. So we're attacking this from a number of angles, and we're getting some good value on it, I think, because of all that.
Before we get out of here, let's toss it over to Action Network's predictive analyst Billy Ward to talk YRFI Nerfies for Friday.
Thanks, guys. Back with a couple of YRFI Nerfy picks today, both at the same time, the 6:45 Eastern start games. First one, the Tigers and Phillies Nerfy at minus 125. Jack Flaherty starting for the Tigers today has not been great. Just not the player he was last year with the Tigers and Dodgers in that World Series win. But there's a little bit of regression baked in here. His first time through the order ERA and xFIP are both around 2.8. His overall ERA is higher, but his underlying stats are a little bit better. which suggests he's been a little bit unlucky. Not horribly, but someone who we can expect to perform slightly better going forward. And then on the other side, the Tigers have to face Ranger Suarez, who has a 2.59 overall ERA. His first time through the order ERA is 1.07. Those are, almost Paul Skeens-esque numbers. Makes him one of the better NRFI pitchers. Both teams hit the handedness of the pitcher they're facing a little bit better, which gives me a little bit of pause. But the weather here in Detroit, pretty chilly, wind blowing in, about a 15% reduction in overall scoring, according to Weather Edge, which puts me over the top on this one with the minus 125 line. Other one, going the other direction on a YRFI, that is the Brewers Nationals. Game has a 9-run total, getting the YRFI at minus 110. Kind of just systematically a solid bet more often than not. Lefty on lefty matchup with Mitchell Parker and Jose Quintana. Quintana is the inverse of Jack Flaherty. His underlying metrics are much worse than his actual ERA. And then Mitchell Parker's ERA is around 5, both overall and first time through the order. So definitely a pitcher we're okay to target. Opposite scenario, I would prefer this to be a righty on righty matchup based on the tops of the orders for both teams. But we have weather that boosts scoring about 15% according to Weather Edge. So that cancels that out. Could get a good value on that if this game total continues to rise. Definitely want to jump on that one early. And then perhaps if an arbitrage situation occurs, take that later. Back to you guys.
That'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to tail some of the bets that you heard from Billy or from Derek in today's episode, look for the quick slip link in the episode description. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the pod. Also check out the Action Network Discord. There's a link in the episode description of this podcast to sign up for that. We'll be back on Monday. Grant Nefer, Sean Zerillo, and myself for another episode of Payoff Pitch. You can tune in to that episode live over on our YouTube channel at 10 a.m. Eastern. For Derek Carty and Billy Ward, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. And as always, best of luck with all your bets.